Okay, welcome back to our Motzei Shabbos Marathon and our second daf. As we are starting 4 lines from the top of Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. Minayin l'talmid sheyoshev lefnei rabbi. How do you know that, let's say, Eddie is sitting before his Rebbe in the courtroom? He's one of the Talmidim that's sitting at the feet there. And he sees something in the benefit for the ani, or something to the demerit of the wealthy person. Now, he doesn't want to get on the wealthy man's bad side. Minayin shelo yishtaik. How do you know that he shouldn't keep quiet? Talmud Leimer, you have to speak up, regardless of who it is. Midvar sheker tirchak, distance yourself from falsehood. Minayin l'talmid sheroyes rabbi shetoya bedin. Now here Eddie sees his Rebbe, he made a mistake. Instead of correcting him right away, Eddie says, let me go ahead and let the Rebbe finish and pronounce the verdict, and then I'll say, well, what about this svara? And they'll redo the verdict, and it'll be known as my verdict, and I'll get the credit. You know, Eddie, stop that. Let me wait until he finishes and pronounces the verdict. Then I'll unravel it, and I'll give my own presentation, and then it'll be known as my name. But Eddie being silent until then is being false. Now, here's another very interesting one. Minayin l'talmid, let's say that I go ahead and I tell Eddie, there's one witness. AB says that, AB says, is Barry here? You lost Barry? Anyway, AB says that Shelley owes me the money. But I only have one witness. So how do you know that I can't tell Eddie, you know that I would never say a falsehood in a million years. Menayin l'talmid she'amalei rabbi yedei atabi, you know me. Shem nicely mea money, even if they give me 100 hundreds. Eini mavada, I wouldn't lie. Money yeshli eitzel ploni, Shelley owes me a money. Ve'ein li olav ela eid echad. How do we know that Eddie shouldn't combine? Menayin shlo yitztarfi mai. Distance yourself from falsehood. So right away the Gemara pounces. That's not distancing from falsehood. That's being a bare-faced liar. And for him to say that he knows that Shelley owes me the money when he doesn't, that's not distancing yourself from falsehood. That would be Eddie swearing falsely. Testifying falsely. You're not allowed to testify falsely against Shelley. Rather, says the Gemara, the case is as follows. What happens is that Shelley is giving me a hard time with the money he owes me. I know that if Shelley saw I had 2 witnesses, he would right away fess up, but I only have 1 witness. So I tell Eddie, do me a favor. AB knows testimony. You stand next to AB. This way, Shelley will think that I have 2 witnesses. I'm not asking Eddie to do anything, to say anything. I got 1 witness in AB. You should come, and stand there. I'm not asking you to say anything. There won't come a word of falsehood out of your mouth. Afilu achi asr, by giving this false impression, mishum shenema midvar sheker tirchak. Distance yourself from falsehood. Now, 2 lines into the white lines on Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph, learning to be mekayim the mitzvah v'dibarta bam la'aseh snachas ruach liyitzreinu, Shimon and his daughter. That's a nice picture. Great to have you there, little one. It's nice to you're helping your tati learn Torah. Very nice. Now, minayin l'noishe b'chavei raimana. Here I'm getting clever. You know that a moide b'miksa satana yeshava. If you admit to part, you have to swear. Once you have to swear, so then I could say, swear about this also. It's called Gilgul Shvua, even though it's something that normally you wouldn't have to swear. But once you're mechuyev to swear, I could roll on other things too. So listen to this case over here. Listen to, Mark owes me $100. But I also have a claim on Mark for some real estate. But on real estate, I can't ask Mark to swear, because ein nishban ala karkos. So here's what I want to do. It's really interesting. I want to go and claim to Mark that he owes me $200. He's going to say, Rabbi Weiss, I only owe you $100. I'll say, Mark, you're a moide b'mikses. Moide b'mikses a tiny yeshava. Now that you have to swear about the real estate too. So that would be my ploy to get him to swear. But in order to do that, I have to make a claim that he owes me $200 when I know he only owes me $100. But I'm only doing it not to collect the $200. I'm only doing it to get him to swear on the real estate. So says the Gemara, "Menayin l'noishe b'chavei ramana." If I have a claim of $100 for Mark, shelo yemer, I shouldn't say etenenu b'masayim. I'll make a claim of $200. Kedei sheyoydeli b'mana. Then he'll admit to $100. Oh, he's a moide b'miksa, so I'll have to swear. Yiskav li shvua, and then v'galgal of shvua m'makom acher, and then I'll roll on him the shvua on the real estate. I'm not allowed to do that, Talmud Leimer, because when I claimed $200, it wasn't true. I know he only owes me $100. Talmud Leimer midvar sheker tirchak. Minayin l'noish b'chavei ramana. How do you know that if I have a claim of $100 on Mark, V'tanu masayim, and I make a claim of $200. Now Mark, he sees right through me. He knows that I'm only doing it so that he should deny and say he only owes me $100, and then I'll make him swear about the real estate. So what he does is, in court, he denies everything. He says, La'adam, lo yaya dvar me'olam. And then outside of court, he says, here, Rabbi Weiss, here's the $100. And the only reason why he didn't want to deny it, because if he denied and admitted to $100, he would have to swear, and he didn't want to swear about the real estate. But in order to do that, he has to say in court that I don't owe Rabbi Weiss anything. So, where I have a claim of $100, and I claim that he owes me $200. Shelo Yomer, Mark can't say, I see right through Rabbi Weiss. I'll deny everything in Bezdin, so that way I don't have to swear. And then I'll give him the $100 outside of Bezdin, in order that I shouldn't be chayiv to meshvua, and they won't roll the shvua on the real estate on me. He can't do that. Because when he denies in court and he says he owes me nothing, that's a temporary lie. You have to distance yourself from lying. Now this is very interesting. Huh? What?
Is there time limit for lying?
No.
You said there's no time limit for lying? I mean, what does this mean that what does it mean that you just said?
What it means is that really Mark is going to give me the $100.
Right.
He's just saying it in court that he doesn't owe me anything in order that I shouldn't roll on him a shvua.
Well, okay, that I understood. But you said something after that. You said something about, okay.
Minayin l'shloisha shenoishin mana be'echad. Here's an interesting case. Bruce, Menachem, and Irving have a claim for 100 on Mark. Now, what do? They don't have witnesses. So what they do is they say, you know what? Irving will come with a claim of 100, and Menachem and Bruce will be the two witnesses. And then when Mark gives the 100 to Irving, they'll split it 3 ways. Now, while the end result will be true, but it's not true that Mark owes Irving 100. So Menayin l'shloisha shenoishim mana be'echad, that if there's a total of 100 owed to Menachem, to Bruce, and to Irving, shlo yeh echad baldin, they shouldn't say, well, Irving is owed 100, ushnayim edim, and the two of them, Menachem and Bruce, will be the witnesses. Kedei sheyoytzi mana, then they'll take the 100 from Mark v'yachloiku, and they'll split it into 3. Talmud Leimer midvar sheker tirchak. It's not true. Mark doesn't own 100 to Irving, even though the result will be the truth, but he doesn't owe 100 to Irving. Now, minayin l'shnayim shebo l'din. Here, what happens is Dr. Guy and Yitz come into court. Echad loivish samatutin. Yitz is wearing poor clothing. The echad lovish itzlis bas me'amana. And Dr. Guy is wearing a robe of 100 mana. The Yitz comes in rags, and Dr. Guy is wearing a tuxedo. So their presentation in court is not equal. And it could be that Yitz will feel cowed by the way Dr. Guy looks. Sha'imrim loy, we tell Dr. Guy, either levush kamaisai, dress like Yitz, or he'll be shu kamaischa, or buy Yitz, or rent Yitz a tuxedo. One way or the other, because otherwise it could result in Yitz being cowed to present his argument correctly. Talmud Leimer midvar sheker tirchak. Indeed, Kiav also came to Rabbah, when litigants came before Rabbah, Barav Huna, Amalahu, he would tell them, Shlufu puz mekaychu, if one of them was wearing very fancy footwear, he would tell them, remove your expensive footwear, v'chutu ladina, and get ready for judgment. Minayin shelo yishma divrei baldin kodem sheyavoi baldin chaveira. How do you know that you can't listen to one litigant before the other litigant comes? Because, you see, if the other one is not present, the first litigant won't be embarrassed to lie. He'll be embarrassed to lie in front of the other litigant, because the other litigant knows he's lying. So how do you know you can't present your case before the other one comes? Now, not only is that forbidden on the judge, but it's also forbidden on the litigant to try to pull that off. He shouldn't give a taste of his case to the dying kodem sheyava baldin chaver, right? Talmud Leimer midvar sheker tirchak. Rav Kahana Masne, Rav Kahana learns this same thing. Malay sisa, the judge shouldn't bear such a report. And loy sashi, the litigant shouldn't offer such a report. Va'asher loy toiv asa b'seich amav, and that he didn't do good amongst his people. What does this refer to? Rav Amazah bar Barsha, This is a person that comes with a waiver, a power of attorney. Let's say that Shelley and Nachman have a case, and they come before a judge, and Shelley gives power of attorney to Irving. That's not good, because Irving has no license to compromise. And that's going to make the case harder on Nachman. If Shelley was there, he could accept a compromise. So it's not fair to send power of attorney. This is a case where Eddie, infamous Eddie, who's hiding now, I don't blame him. Eddie, we know you're there even though you're hiding. This is a case where Eddie buys a field that has claims on it, but he knows that people won't want to deal with him, and they'll strong arm him to not start up. So, Eddie says to the owner, look, I know you got problems with this field. I'll pay you a pittance. I'm telling you, they're not going to start up with me. They don't start up with a guy that lives in a different city every day. They're not going to start up with me. So the Gemara says that's wrong to do. Now the Mishnah says that Shavuos Daf eina noheges ela beru'in lahoid, with one that's fit to testify. Obviously, if he's not fit to testify, he can't make a shvuah about testimony. Lafuke mai, who is this excluding? Amra Papa Lafuke Melech, because the king doesn't give testimony, because the king would have to stand, and it's beneath his dignity to stand. Rabbi Achba Yaakov Amar Lafuke Mesachek Kuvya, one who is a gambler, who plays dice. Because a gambler, as we said, it's considered that when he takes his winnings, since his opponent never really thought that he was going to lose, so he never really gave it over, and therefore it's considered like theft. It's called an asmachta loikanya. So mandiyama misach bekuvya, that he can't give testimony kol shchei melech, then for sure the king. But a mandiyama melech, aval misach bekuvya, that we don't need this extra clause in the Mishnah, because that's excluded from the fact that it says in the Mishnah, if you're pasalei, this, because he's midaraisa, the other way around, aval mesachik b'kuvya, but the gambler, midaraisa mirzachasi, he's fit biblically, and it's only Rabbanan who depasur, the rabbis disqualified him, and therefore there would still be an issa daraisa of Shavuos Daf. Now, we have a machloikis over here. What happens if the person made a shvuah himself? He wasn't administered. Administered means where Menachem and Shimon says, we don't know testimony. And I say, Mashbiachani, I impose an oath on you. That's an administered oath. Mepi atzmai is where Yitz and Shimon swear they don't know testimony. So we had a machloikis, if it's mepi atzmai, can that be even outside of court? So Rameir says that mepi atzmai is even outside of court, while the Rabbanan say that mepi atzmai also is only if they deny it in court. So now the Gemara says, what's the machloikis over here? Bifnei bezdin b'shaloi bifnei bezdin. B'maika miflagi. What is the argument over here? Amru Rabbanan kamid Rapapa. B'dayin mina umina. When you learn out from a different subject, and when you learn out from the different subject, you take all of the framework from that different subject. Or b'dayin mina v'uke ba'asma. When we learn out from a different subject, we put it back in its own subject, and it keeps the framework of its own subject. Now, I know that sounds like just words. So we're going to see what this means. Rameir Savar Doin Mina Umina. We learn out that Shavuos Edus could be a self-administered oath. We learned that out from the Shavuot about a deposit. And since we're learning it out from the Shavuot of a deposit, so Umina, it gets the framework of a deposit where it's binding even outside of court. Let's see that inside. Rameir Savar Doin Mina Umina says the Gemara, Mipikadon. We learn now from a Shavuot about a deposit. Ma pikadon mushba mipi atzmai chayiv. If you self-administer the oath, you're chayiv. Af edus, so also about testimony mushba mipi atzmai chayiv. Omina, and therefore it has all the halachas of pikadon. Ma pikadon bein bebezdin bein shaloi bebezdin, whether it's in court, whether it's not in court. Af edus, so also shavuos edus bein bebezdin bein shaloi bebezdin. Rabbanan Savray. Rabbanan say, Dain Mina v'uke ba'asra. We learn out the initial law from Pikadon, but then we bring it back to the law of Shavuos Edus. Ma Pikadon mushba m'piatz mechayiv. A self-administered oath is chayiv. Af Edus mushba m'piatz mechayiv. So also a self-administered oath by testimony is also chayiv. V'uke ba'asra, but then we put it in its own slot. Ma mushba m'piachayim. Just like an imposed oath by Shavuos Edus, bebezdin in Shalai bebezdin lai, af mushba mepiatzmai. So also a self-administered oath by Edus, bebezdin in, only in court Shalai bebezdin lai. Says the Gemara, suggests the Gemara as we turn to Lamar Aleph from the base. Amalu Rapapa, ime pikadon gamrila. Perhaps if we learn it out from a Shavuot deposit. Even Pikadon Rabban the Kuli Amalai Pligi the Dain Mina Mina. We would learn everything out from Pikadon, and then it would even be outside of Bezdin. But the reason why the Rabbanan say that a self-imposed oath is only in Bezdin by Edus, Elahaina time of the Rabbanan, they don't learn it out from Shavuos Pikadon, but rather the Maisel Bekal V'chayim. If it's an imposed oath from others that you yourself didn't make the oath, you're still chayiv. If you went and made the oath yourself, if we're learning it out of Kal V'chaymer from Shavuos Edus itself, then what you learn out from the Kal V'chaymer has to be like the source. Just like the source, when it's administered by others, it's only in Bezdin. Ma'amushba m'pi acherim bebezdin, in shaloi bebezdin lai, and not outside of Bezdin. Af mushba m'pi atzmai. So also when it's self-administered, b'fnei Bezdin, in shaloi b'fnei Bezdin lai. Amalei Rabbanan Rapapa. So Rabbanan said to Rapapa, Mi matzis amrit the lab b'doin mina pligi. Can you not prove that they're arguing about whether we say Dain Mina Mina or Dain Mina Vuke Ba'asra? V'tanan, we learned Gabe Pikadon by deposit, Shavuos HaPikadon, the oath of a deposit, Neheges Ba'anoshim or B'anoshim, both by men and women, B'rechaykim B'bekrayvim, by strangers and by relatives, B'ksherim U'B'psulin. It's Neheg by a kosher and apostle. Just 1 second. Yeah, over here, there's no need to give testimony. It's just a question of whether somebody has a deposit. So therefore, it's by men and women, by strangers and relatives, by one who is kosher and one is apostle, b'fnei bezdin v'shaloi b'fnei bezdin, whether it's in the presence of court or not, mipi atzmai u'mipi acherim, whether it's self-administered or by others. Still, einoi chayiv, he's not chayiv, ad sheyichper by bebezdin. He's not chayiv until he denies it in bezdin. Divrei Meir. The Chachamim say, bein mepi atzma or bein mepi acherim, whether it's self-imposed or by others, kevin shekafa by chayiv. Once he denies it, he's chayiv even if he's outside of the court. So let's see this. What was Rameya's opinion? Rameya's opinion is bifnei bezdin v'shaloi bifnei bezdin mepi atzma, if it's self-administered. If it's imposed by others, the Chachamim say bein mepi atzma bein mepi acherim, whether it's self-administered or imposed by others. Kevin shekafa by chayiv, once he denies it, he's chayiv, even if it's outside of the court. Now, Mushba b'pi acherim b'pikadon minalu rabbanan dechayiv. How do rabbanan know that you're chayiv when it's imposed by others by a pikadon? It doesn't say imposed by others by a deposit. Lav de gamri lama edus. Isn't it that they learn it out from Shavuos Daf? Now, right. The Gemara really doesn't speak this out. It's really interesting. By Shavuos Pikadon, the Chachamim hold that you're chayiv whether it's self-administered or if it's imposed by others. But it doesn't say imposed by others by Shavuos Pikadon. So how do you know where it's imposed by others? You're also chayiv. Mushpa b'pi acherim b'pikadon minolu rabbanan dechayiv. How do they know? Lav de gamri la me'edus. They learn it out from Shavuos Daf. Now, by Shavuos Daf, where it's imposed by others, it's only in court. But here, the Chachamim say that if it's imposed by others, it's even if it's outside of court. Kevin shekafa by chayiv. So how do they know that? If they learn out mepi acherim from Shavuos Daf, and by Shavuos Daf it's only in court, but they say that over here by Pikadon it's even outside of court, Kevin shekafa by chayiv, that must be that the Chachamim hold dain minavu kebasra. We learn it out from Shavuos Daf, but then we give the halacha like by Shavuos Pikadon that's even outside of court. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ushmami nabi dain minav minapoli, and the Rabban hold dain minavu kebasra. Says the Gemara, you're right. Mahi in, from this you could prove it. Meha, but from before lekala mishma mina we couldn't prove it because we had the alternate that maybe we say it's a kal v'chaymer. Now, the chayovin al zdayin hashvua. Mark is chayiv even if he swears falsely. He knows that he swore falsely. He knows that he doesn't know testimony. So the Gemara asks right away, Minani Mili. From where do we know that you're chayiv even a carbon, even on a mazit? That's an anomaly. Usually you're not chayiv a carbon for a mazit. Says the Gemara, the Tan Rabbanan, Bikulan, elsewhere, Nema Bahem Benelam, and it was unknown. The Kanloi Nema Bahem Benelam. Here it doesn't say, and it was unknown. L'chayiv al amazit k'shogeg, to be mechayiv him on willful, like if it was an error. V'al shigigasa im zedayin ha'edos, and also if Mark was in error, although he knew that he was swearing falsely about testimony. He knows the testimony, and he swears he doesn't know it. So hechi dami shigigasim is this. If he knows, so then how is it a shaygeg? Says Gemara, Mark didn't know that he was chayiv a carbon. That was a shaygeg. I know this oath is asur. He didn't know whether he was chayiv a carbon for it or not. But if he was totally unaware, meaning that he didn't know that he knew the testimony, he wasn't aware, so there he's not chayiv. Says Gemara, so that's what we learned, that, remember we said that Rav Kahana and Rav Asi, each one swore that this is the pshat that Rav said. And we said that they're potter, because they were anonymous. They each thought that that's what Rav said. So from the fact that we're saying that here Mark didn't know, so lema tanina l'de Rav Kahana de Rav Asi. Says Gemara loy. Afal gav d'tnan, even though over here we say that if Mark is totally unaware, he's potter from bringing a carbon, that might only be by Shavuos Daf. Because by Shavuos Daf he's chayiv if he did it b'mezid. So therefore we say, if there's no element of mezid, he was totally clueless, he's potter. But by Shavuos Bitui, by an oath of utterance, where they said that's what Rav said, maybe they're chayiv. As the Gemara says, loy apagab d'tnan itzka. So kedai t'chamina hachahu d'loy ksiva v'nelam. Since it doesn't say, and he was unaware, there has to be something that was willful. Aval hasam d'chsiv v'nelam, they were unaware. Afilu shigigasa koldu, even if they were completely unaware, each one thought that that's what Rav said, I might think that they would be chayiv, kamash malan, that in that case also that they're not. Okay, I think we're going to stop over here because we're going to have to, we'll learn the Mishnah and then soon Gemara on Matzah Shavuos, so we might as well learn the Mishnah anew on Matzah Shavuos. It's very nice to promise to show Hashem already. We're looking forward right after Shavuos again to learn Tu Blat. We are going to learn now the Mishnah Yomis and Pirkei Avos, so stay tuned for that in a moment.